EMTs, has a call ever revealed something that made you angry at humanity? I've been a paramedic for 14 years. I've responded to every kind of emergency call. Heart attacks, overdoses, suicide attempts, car wrecks. You learn to stay professional, to not judge, to just do your job and move on. I thought I was numb to everything. Then we got called to a residential address for an unresponsive elderly man. The call came from a neighbor who said she hadn't seen him in a few days, and his newspapers were piling up. This wasn't unusual. We get wellness checks on seniors all the time. Sometimes they've fallen, sometimes it's worse. We arrived at a small house in a quiet neighborhood. Rang the doorbell, knocked, no answer. The neighbor had a key from years ago. She let us in. The smell hit us first, that distinct odor you learn to recognize in this job. We found him in his recliner in the living room. Harold Perkins, age 79. He'd been dead at least 4 days in summer heat. We called it in and waited for the medical examiner. While we waited, I looked around. The house was clean but outdated, like nobody had redecorated since the 80s. There were photos everywhere. Harold with his wife, who I learned from the neighbor had died 2 years ago. Harold with his kids, 3 of them based on the pictures. Grandkids too, maybe 6 or 7 in various photos. The neighbor told us Harold had been a veteran, worked as an electrician for 40 years, raised his family in this house. Good man, she said. Kept to himself after his wife died, but always waved hello. Then I noticed something that made my stomach turn. There was a calendar on the kitchen wall. Harold had marked things on it. Doctor appointments with check marks, showing he'd gone. His wife's birthday circled with cemetery written next to it. And then I saw what was circled for the week he died. Call kids, written on Monday. Try again, on Tuesday. Call again on Wednesday. Thursday had nothing. That was probably the day he died. On the kitchen counter, I found his phone. I shouldn't have looked, but something made me check his call log. He'd called the same 3 numbers repeatedly in those 4 days. His children, I assumed. Multiple calls each day. The longest anyone had stayed on the line was 43 seconds. Most went to voicemail. The medical examiner arrived and did his preliminary assessment. Natural causes, heart failure, peaceful way to go, he said. But I kept thinking about that calendar and those phone calls. The neighbor asked if we'd notified the family yet. I said that was the medical examiner's job. She made a face and said good luck with that. She told me Harold's kids never visited anymore. They'd fought over their mother's jewelry after the funeral 2 years ago, accused Harold of playing favorites with the inheritance, even though everything was split equally. They'd basically cut him off after that. Harold had tried to reconcile, but they wouldn't take his calls most of the time. The neighbor said Harold had told her a month ago that he was worried about being alone, that if something happened, it might be days before anyone noticed. She told him not to be silly, to call his children if he needed anything. He'd said he'd tried, but they were busy. Then the medical examiner came out and said he'd called all 3 children. 2 didn't answer. 1 did, but said she couldn't come identify the body for at least a week because she was on vacation in Florida. Asked if they could just handle it without her. The medical examiner asked about funeral arrangements. The daughter said to cremate him and they'd figure out the rest later, like he was discussing garbage disposal. And here's what made me want to scream. When we were packing up to leave, I saw a greeting card on Harold's kitchen table. It was a Father's Day card he'd bought himself, still in the envelope, never sent. Inside, he'd written all 3 of his children's names and addresses, but never mailed it. Father's Day had been 3 weeks before he died. 2 of the 3 kids never showed up at all. The 3rd came 5 days later to clear out the house and sell it. I drove past a month later and there was a sold sign out front. Harold's children probably split that money too. I hope it was worth it.